Coming up, Lee Broda joins Illeana in just a minute.
Welcome to Popcorn Talk, featuring movie discussion, news, and interviews. Popcorn Talk. We talk movies.
And now, it's the I Blame Dennis Hopper podcast, starring Illeana Douglas. Eavesdrop with Illeana as she interviews Hollywood's most prominent players about filmmaking, acting, and what really happens on the set of your favorite flicks and TV shows.
Hey, hello everyone. Welcome to the I Blame Dennis Hopper podcast. I am Illeana Douglas. So great to be here. Hello, Tamara.
Hello,
Bird,
love. How are you?
I'm very well. My lovely co-host. So nice to see you.
Nice to see you.
And we have Lee Broda on the show today, producer of a movie I really love that I've touted, I believe, on the show, The Kindergarten Teacher.
Yes.
You know, we have a family. We're like movie family. I'm very serious about my films.
Yes, you are.
And
in case anybody out there didn't know.
I remember over Christmas, my brother, actually, I was home in the East Coast, and my brother went on a date with a girl, and they went to see that's how I first heard about it. He went
The Kindergarten Teacher?
Yes.
Oh, wow.
Well,
he
went to see it on a date, and she didn't like it. And he did. He came home and he said, it's really good. So we sort of have a family thing. Like most of our movie...
You agree on?
Yeah. I don't think we disagree, except for my mom and her obsession with Game of Thrones, which I can't...
Oh, yeah.
It's just, it goes over my head. But I hear it's popular. But Mom likes it.
I hear the kids are talking about it these days.
So many things to talk about. The first thing, of course, I must say, just so saddened about director John Singleton passing away from a massive stroke. I'm just
51 years old.
Yes, it's it's always so hard when you somebody is so young like that, and with Luke Perry a couple few years ago, and just my own personal experience with him is that he used to go to Cinefamily all the time, where I would go, and just the nicest guy, just to, aside from being an Oscar-nominated director, just a nice guy to sit next to and eat popcorn and talk about movies. And that was, again, one of the great things about Cinefamily or the New Beverly. It just was like a great place to hang out with other filmmakers and
film lovers
and artists. Mm-hmm. And of course, I've interviewed Stephanie Elaine here on the show.
Yes.
And TCM, producer of Boys in the Hood. And, as always, the best thing you can do to honor people is to watch their movies and remember the contributions that they made. And so I'm going to be kind of looking forward to seeing. I remember what a big deal it was when that film came out. I lived in New York, so it was like, what area of California is this? And it introduces you to a whole new culture and a whole new type of filmmaking, and the list of actors that are in these, films, Cuba Gooding, and,
right.
Ice Cube, and so it'll be fun. I'm going to be re-examining watching all of these films.
When Stephanie Elaine was on the podcast, she of course also spoke glowingly of John, and I recommend people go back and listen to that one. It was around this time last year, maybe I think, or possibly a little bit earlier than that. But anyway, she's an incredible woman, and she had some amazing things to say about him.
Yes.
So it would be an interesting time to listen to that one again.
It's so sad. So that, and also very briefly, I was asked to comment for The Hollywood Reporter about a story they're doing about the closing of Samuel French, along the same lines of, the closing of Cinefamily and all these other places. Just again, a place to hang out and see actors and pick up a book and
it was kind of a fairy tale place, mean, you were so surrounded by the art of acting and in that spot, and it was just so interesting. Everywhere you turned, there was something, to look at, something that would sort of bring you to a different time, I felt like.
Yeah.
Because it was sort of a really traditional bookstore.
Exactly. The way they, showcased all the
Yeah.
different books, and you really felt welcomed in there, and you could pick up a card, and I just feel like all those little nice old-fashioned things are going away.
Yeah.
When you walk by Starbucks and everybody's on their computer and nobody's talking. It's so surreal coming out of the culture that I grew up in. When you pass, everybody's reading and talking, and that's sort of gone away. It's
Town Square.
It's very quiet. So look for that. And then also I participated in the CNN documentary on the movies.
Yes.
Very excited about. That'll be out in July, talking about all sorts of films, going back to the silent, to the silent era. I think they talk about a couple movies that I'm in. As always, I plugged my theory as to why there are no women films on the AFI Top 100, and they keep. Every time, like I have this thing that there's, since the 70s when they started the list, and there's no female-directed films. And each year I kind of check, because each year they amend it and they put new movies on it. Well, guess what movie is on the AFI Top 100?
Hurt Locker.
The Goodfellas.
Oh.
Goodfellas is now on, which is nice because I'm in the movie, but can't they pick? Wait, and they keep taking movies off that I have said, like, My Fair Lady, so, they took that off and put something else on. But they have yet to put a female film on the list, which I find to be so strange. I mean, A League of Their Own. These are some of my picks that I would...
Right. That should definitely be
A League of Their Own, Big...
Yes.
Sleepless in Seattle.
Yes.
Would all be picks for me. Ida Lupino's The Hitchhiker, I think. Wanda would be another great pick. Do you have any favorite female? Now,
I would say you named two of mine, A League of Their Own and Big.
Yeah, A League of Their Own is. I can't believe it. I cannot believe it's not on. It's just, and it's about baseball.
An all-American pastime.
Yeah, so I'm always so curious who picks the AFI Top 100, but they do keep amending it, So it's interesting. I've seen, over the years, times obviously change, and they take certain movies off.
Right.
Birth of a Nation still on the AFI Top 100. Still
Speaking
there.
of times changing,
there.
I guess they're not changing that much.
But
I do wonder who is there a
Birth
board
of a Nation. I believe there's some controversy surrounding that
Last
film.
I heard.
But we don't want to take that one off.
No
way. We don't want to see A League of Her Own on instead of Birth of a Nation. So anyway, that is that's my little grumpy complaint for
soapbox moment. I love it. I think it's
today.
Good.
But we should let's go ahead and have
bring in
Lee on, and which I'm so excited about. Lee she's a producer, she's a writer, she's an actor. She was in the Israeli army, for God's sakes.
Yes, she was.
She has one of the producers of A Private War, The Kindergarten Teacher. She's a writer and founder of the creative Middle Eastern women's group, Women Creating Change. And she's going to be filming her next movie with somebody we love in May, Tesla. I'm going to be seeing that, starring Ethan Hawke. Please welcome Lee Broda. Thank you so much for being here.
Thank you for having me.
I mentioned in your intro you were in the Israeli army.
I was, yes, for almost 2 years, yes.
That's amazing. I once worked with a director named Donna Lustig, who did a movie I was in called Wedding Bell Blues, and she was
in Donna well.
She was in the Israeli army. Don't mess with a female director or a female producer that was in the army. You can't complain about anything.
No, it can kick ass. So be careful.
That's so great. So, as always, I don't know if you've seen the show before, but our first question. I know you grew up in Israel. Mm-hmm. Do you remember the first movie that you saw, and who took you to see it?
Yeah, I saw a Disney movie. It was one of my first ones. I think The Little Mermaid was my first one. I think it was probably 5 or 6, and
wow.
I remember it was just a whole new experience. My mom used to take us to see musicals more, and I remember like going to the movie theater, and I just fell in love. And I used to love singing and dancing. I was performing as a little girl, so I was always dreaming about Ariel and Aladdin. That was like my two favorite Disney movies.
And so growing up in Israel, did you think, at what point, because I know you're a writer, you do poems, you act, I mean, what was your first love in terms of going, did you want to start out as an actress or was a writer? What was your sort of way in?
I actually started as a dancer.
Oh, really?
Yeah, so I was dancing for many years. Acting and singing kind of came later. But yeah, I was dancing since I was 5 in different companies. I was actually touring with our dance group in Europe. And when I moved here to the States, I was dancing in a dance company here. So that's how I made a living for a little bit while I was going to college. And acting followed pretty quickly as well, because I just loved the stage. I loved performing. Before I discovered my love for film. So it was always the stage for me. And then everything else kind of happened later on, the producing and casting and writing.
Well, that's the obvious question, of course. You've got so many credits. You've got like 34 credits as a producer. That's pretty...
In just a few years, too.
That's pretty
7 years.
amazing.
Thank you.
You must be, or do you like wake up in the morning and go, damn, girl, I am. That's great. I mean, it's so hard. It's really hard, especially nowadays, to get things done. It's like, in the old days, it was like you get the right amount of people and you get the money and like you're shooting. That was the 90s. But
now it's a struggle, especially where the industry is going. I feel like with the foreign market being so unstable and the DVD and the whole kind of revolution that happened, it's just making filmmaking kind of hard outside of the studio system. But I don't know, I kind of find a niche that I guess helps make movies, and I try to do about 6 a year. Hopefully I'll keep making 6 a year. That's I'm pretty comfortable with that number. But it's just my involvement is very different on each movie. So on some of them I've been on years and trying to get them, in the right shape to get into production with development and writing notes and casting. And some of them I'm coming on board kind of towards the end where they need kind of their last piece of financing or some cast. And so the movie is about to start a few months kind of later. So that's how I'm able to juggle so many different productions.
What kind of stories is there something, because the variety of stories that you've been involved in are also interesting. A Private War, Kindergarten Teacher, and this new one, Tesla. I was reading up about it yesterday. I mean, it's really interesting, almost historical in a sense. Not the Kindergarten Teacher, but the stories really have a bite to them.
I'm attracted to true stories, and I try to tell more of like inspiring stories that can really, move people or kind of expose something new that they don't know about a subject. But I used to make really different films. I started with horror films and then some comedies and not so great action movies. So I feel like recently I kind of tapped into a place that I can choose more what I want to be involved with, and it's not always about what makes sense financing wise or to my investors that I work with. So I feel like I have more of a voice and a stand now. And I just love to make good movies that make a difference. And I realized about 2 years ago that I was making all these movies and I wasn't really telling female-driven stories as much or working with female directors, and the conversation, especially now in Hollywood, it's all about that. And I was like, I'm doing something wrong. I'm a woman and I'm trying to fight for women and work with more women, and I'm not working with any women directors. So Sarah was the first one actually on the kindergarten teacher. And
So I want to go back to that story. It was originally a film, an Israeli film, and so you were aware of. Just to tell me about the origin of how the movie came about, and then how you decided to remake it here for an American film.
so Nadav Lapid was the director of the original Israeli movie, and it was actually a great film, and it was in a lot of film festivals around the world, and had its own kind of buzz. But then I remember one of the Israeli producers came to New York, and were introduced by a casting director just to kind of get to know each other, because I wasn't really working with Israeli filmmakers, because I make mainly American movies. And she was telling me about the kindergarten teacher, and I was like, oh, I heard about it, and she wanted to make it here in the States, and I was like, oh, that's interesting. And I looked at her and I was like, okay, let me think about it, how I can help. But we kind of I watched the film again and put some thought into it, but she ran with it and actually found Maven, which is Maven Pictures in New York. And Celine, they really believed in the movie, and Sarah came on board to direct it, and then she got Maggie.
Maggie Gyllenhaal.
Yeah, attached. And that's how the movie got made. It was more the Israeli producers kind of coming to the States with this vision of making the movie for an international audience and not just in Hebrew.
Now, were there any differences in the story to make it more relatable to an American audience? I mean, is it common in Israel to have poetry nights, and it just seems so New York.
It's well, I feel like Sarah kind of brought her own take to the film as well, and Israel has for sure
coffee house.
Yeah, I feel the main struggle was because the Israeli film was in Hebrew.
Yes.
Which that's the main difference from preventing it from maybe crossing over to an international audience, although there's so many wonderful Israeli shows these days kind of everywhere. But I feel like just bringing Maggie also just helped kind of opening the door.
It's perfect. So for those who haven't seen it, and you can help me out with the plot, but basically she is a teacher who is in an aspiring poet and is in a poetry group, and her teacher, wonderful, doesn't really like any of her poems. Just sort of thinks they're
kills it.
She works so hard at them. Thinks they're kind of derivative, and then she goes to class. And in her class, the student will sing this picture now. This kid is remarkable, and we're going to talk about that, the casting. But he just kind of absentmindedly says something, and she realizes it's just kind of genius, and she ends up. Would you say that she sort of steals his steals his poetry so she can be good in class, and the relationship develops from there. And I don't want to give any more away, but I just thought it was such a unique story, and the relationship, of course, between the student and Maggie Gyllenhaal, because it's not just about her stealing the poetry. It's got this duality into it, because in her mind, she thinks he's a genius, and so he should be.
She wants to protect him, because his dad doesn't really care, and he doesn't give him the attention he needs to kind of protect the artist in him. So I think she really fights for that, to make sure she nourished that in him and see the potential and help him grow and develop that talent that he has. And I feel like what's really disturbing about this whole relationship is like you're not really sure where it's going. Yeah. And you don't really see that often between an older, of teacher, right? And that relationship with a younger boy that is kind of developing in an unexpected direction. And then what happens at the end, we don't want to ruin it for all of you, but it kind of goes to,
So tell me about the casting of the boy. Their relationship is incredible. I mean, it reminded me a little bit of the movie Gloria. You know, Gina Rowlands has a relationship with a young boy, and it's very similar. This boy is so mature and sophisticated.
I know he's like 5. I saw him at Sundance. He came with his family, and he's so brilliant and wonderful, and just a boy, right? He doesn't really know, and I don't think he's done much before this. I think it's probably one of his first ones. So, he was great. I know they had a great time working with him on set, and he's just charming and great.
And tell me about working with Maggie. She's just such a wonderful actress and always does such interesting things. And what is an actress like? What does she bring to a movie that another actress doesn't? And then I'm going to ask you the same thing about Rosamund Pike, who's another actress I love, who is so unusual. But what do you think her qualities are that really stand out?
I think great actresses in general, there's an extra layer, right, about everything in the script and everything about the character. And they really want to make it multidimensional, and they always ask questions. And I think it's always about a collaboration with the director and staying true to the story, but also to their character. And I think just watching them work is just so brilliant, trying different things on set and different takes. It's inspiring to me to watch them. First of all, because I started as an actress, so always watching great actresses work is something I enjoy tremendously. But I think just the curiosity and the hard work and really doing your research and knowing your character from kind of all angles and bringing your heart to everything that you do.
Yeah, everything that, down to the clothes and the hair. And I'm never distracted. I know that sounds crazy, but sometimes when you see a movie and an actress, I'm distracted by the fact that their hair looks too good, or, the clothes look a little bit off the rack, like they don't really look like, a real person. You know?
And I feel like she wasn't afraid. There's a scene that, she takes off her clothes, and the same with Rosamund, right? Not afraid she doesn't have to look pretty. It's more about the authenticity of the character and staying true to her.
Another thing I love about the movie is, again, even though it's a small story, some of the locations are really wonderful. Nothing is taken for granted in the film, and so as a producer, I'm assuming it was somewhat of a low budget film, but
yes, very low budget. But yeah, we're filming in New York and upstate New York and kind of all over. But yeah, you have to make it for a budget in order to make your investors happy. And I usually represent the investors, not always. So protecting the money is something I try to do constantly. So it's always a battle, right? Like between how much money you spend and trying to accommodate the filmmakers and the story, and also making a movie for the right budget so you can keep making movies.
And when you're working with a director on a movie like that, like what are some of the things, the requests? Is it always more time, or with
directors? I think
I need more days
or more takes, but I think it's really surrounding them by people that work well together, that really will support their vision, and being there for them, listening, and also have an extra eye. Because sometimes things kind of fall between, the cracks, and I think a good producer is also there to serve the director and be there for them. And at the end of the day, we're trying to tell a story, and we're all there to bring this vision to life and make sure it's consistent and that everyone works together as in a great partnership. So even though we have to think about money and budgets and time, we also trying to make a great film.
And what about once the movie is done, like you said, it gets into Sundance, and for filmmakers out there, again, this seems like the most challenge. Back in the day, it was relatively easy, but I can imagine that the competition now, once you finish a movie. So what happens as a producer once the movie is done for people out there trying to get their movies in these festivals?
well, you submit to film festivals and you pray that someone will accept you. The competition is crazy. I feel like Sundance gets thousands and thousands of submission for so many, the slots are getting sometimes shrinked. And we got lucky with a lot of my films. A lot of them play multiple festivals. The Kindergarten Teacher did Sundance, and we were at TIFF before Netflix picked it up for the U.S. and
Toronto International Film Festival, for those who don't know that.
Yes. And Private War as well was in London. And I feel like you really need a strong festival as well to for the movie to get picked up, especially with dramas these days. There's few dramas that I made recently that we were struggling to kind of get into film festival. And if you don't get that slot, it really affects the destiny of the movie, what will happen with it. So it's kind of terrifying because you never know. But again, when you surround yourself with great filmmakers, that Sarah had little accidents at Sundance prior to the Kindergarten Teacher. So Sundance was championing her work prior. Anyhow, and Celine and Trudy have a long relationship with Sundance and TIFF and Cannes Film Festival. So when you come together and we all, you work with people that have been doing this for a long time and they consistently making great films. It makes things easier. So
the last thing I can say about the movie, because we're going to end the show, is that you also, just like Maggie Gyllenhaal in the movie, writes poetry. You write poetry and wrote a book of poems.
Yes.
And we're going to do that at the end. But how does one write? I mean, I was thinking it's such a, when you're a kid, you're so free and you write poems and silly things, and then you grow up and just sort of go. It's just not something you do anymore. So I was so impressed that you wrote a book of poetry.
Yeah, thank you. I've been kind of playing with that since I was a young kid in Israel. I was writing in Hebrew, and it was all so crappy. But this kind of came together in a very surprising way. I was always writing when kind of inspiration hit. It wasn't a consistent thing. But I found myself doing a lot of the movies and the producing and the financing, and my heart was kind of longing for something more creative. And I started to play more with the poetry, and one day I decided it's gonna become more serious, and I enrolled in class similar to Maggie in the Kindergarten Teacher.
Now, is this before the film or out?
Actually, I'm not really sure. I think it was very similar. Yeah. And I found a class in LA that was teaching poetry. And I never thought that's where I'm going to end up. It was so interesting. I never thought I'm going to write a book of poetry. But there was a story and a voice in me that needed to kind of tell those stories and poems. And it needed to be shared with the world. And I wanted it to really represent the quality of work I put out there. So I for 2 years, I really worked hard with like an editor and in class to make sure that the work is there in the standards that it needs to be. And, so, and this book came together last October. About a month before it was out, I was still writing kind of the last poems and shoving them into the book. But yeah, I'm super proud of it. And it kind of represents a different side of me, more vulnerable side outside of the business woman I need to be when I do financing and producing. So,
as I said, we're going to end the show with a poem. But for anyone out there who is like, I'd like to try poetry, is there any, aside from just taking a class, what is... Can you give anybody any sort of tips of how to even get started? Obviously, reading, you can read poetry.
Reading is so important because I started as an actor, so I did a lot of Shakespeare and a lot of Chekhov, but sonnets. So that's kind of was my poetry in the beginning. But I think reading and be exposed to a lot of different styles and different poets is just a huge part of kind of discovering your voice and your art and your craft. And yeah, I think that was helpful for me.
I feel like the last time I was into poetry, I was in my 20s,
Yeah.
reading Sylvia Plath and
Okay, yeah.
Dorothy Parker and, people like Robert Frost, of course, things like that. But as I said, I don't feel like our culture is particularly conducive to like, hey, come over to my house and
read.
Let's read some poems.
It's interesting. My my acting teacher at the school always told us, like, come together and read poetry.
It's awesome. I love it.
Outside of like class or when you part
Yeah.
ways after we finish school. And I was like, okay, but it actually happens more often. I feel like poetry is coming back. It has a huge comeback now with Rupi Kaur. And so many other young poets, and they're becoming New York Times bestsellers. Poetry books, like who knew, right?
Yeah.
So I feel like now is the time, and a lot of the younger audience is kind of rediscovering poetry. So it is exciting, and there's a whole culture of poetry on Instagram. I don't know if you're aware of that,
I'm
but
not.
so many, and people are
Cool.
really interacting and
Oh, great.
responding to things. So
Cool.
I always like getting messages when people discover.
Well, that's
yeah,
nice. Well, that's how
poetry.
That's how we're gonna keep listening. That's how we're gonna end the show. Okay, I must go on to another film that I loved, A Private War, with Rosamund Pike. Just again, a really interesting actress. We actually, as I mentioned to you before the show, we actually worked together on a film very briefly, but didn't have much even interaction, but I have just watched her in films and admired her. Tell me how that project came about, and my God, it's epic. It's a really good film.
Yeah, actually, so I did a movie before Private War called The Informer that is actually coming out this summer, but Rosamund is in it. So that was our first interaction. It was, I think, 2 or 3 years ago in Cannes that we first met briefly. But A Private War came to me a year and a half ago, and it was actually gearing up towards filming, and they were filming in Jordan and the UK. It was like a 10-week shoot, and they needed some support with the financing. There was a piece of some soft money that fell through, and they needed some extra funding to get the movie going. And I first of all, I loved working with her, so it was just easy to say yes to that one, and Jamie Dornan and Stanley Tucci, and also working with Matthew, because he did Cartellen, that was nominated for the Academy Awards for a documentary and had a great vision for the film as well. So it actually wasn't an easy project for me. Usually it takes a few weeks and from the day I receive a project and until we actually come on board. This one was a struggle. It kind of fell apart and came together about probably 5 times for the 7 months until I officially came on board as an executive producer. And we had already Averon, which is the distributor in the U.S., excited and a huge fan of the project. So that was really helpful, kind of getting the project together. And also Thunder Road, which are known for The Town and Sicario and so many brilliant movies. They were the producers. So it was a wonderful team kind of coming together to tell this story. And actually Charlize was attached before Rosamund to play the reporter. Charlize Theron is still a producer on the movie. But Rosamund, it kind of worked out that way, and we're all really happy with the way the movie turned out. And obviously she was nominated for Best Actress for the Golden Globes. And
yeah, there was talking again, it was an interesting year because the movie came out and it didn't really get as much attention as I thought. I thought she just did such a great job, and I don't know. So if anyone hasn't seen it, she's just really terrific, and I love seeing when you meet her in person. She's like Grace Kelly, She's got like this sophistication about her, and this movie, she's just such a hardened, playing a journalist for the New York Times, and just some tough cookie.
Yeah, with her eye patch and Marie Colvin. She was a very complex person, and I think tapping into that and telling that story has so many levels. And she's complex, and you watch the movie and you ask questions. She obviously jeopardized her life to tell these stories and bring it to the public awareness. And I feel like it's so accurate to where we're at with the political climate and everything that is happening with fake news. And she was back then in 2011 really fighting to tell these stories and make sure people know what happens on that side of the world when the Syrian crisis started. And it's just 8 years later, we're telling, the movie is telling her story. And her family just won the trial. I think they got into a settlement of $350 million.
Wow.
So I feel like things come together at the right time for each story. So
it's such an epic film. I mean, was there any kind of real life danger or complications shooting it?
I wasn't on set for this one.
Oh, I see.
Yeah,
Or
Jordan.
that you heard about.
Although Jordan Israelis, we get along.
Yeah.
But no, I wasn't on set for that one. I think I was at Sundance with the kindergarten teacher.
Oh, I see.
But yeah, it was never. Those type of movies are never easy. There's so many explosions and complex scenes.
Yeah.
But Jordan is a safe place, so I don't think there are major issues that I'm aware of.
And I haven't seen The Informer. That's coming out.
Mm-hmm.
As I was looking it up, there's like 30 producers on this film. How is that? How is it possible? And you're involved in She's Funny That Way.
Yes.
Which I always trip up because I want to call it Squirrels to Nuts.
I know.
And again, I think there was like 52 producers on the film.
Yeah.
Like, you're a producer.
I was working with Jeff Rice at the moment.
Yes.
When I was when Squirrels to the Nuts came to us. Yes. So I was reading. I remember reading it and I was like had to give notes in meetings. It was just I think my first year kind of getting into producing. And I was like working with Jennifer Aniston and Owen Wilson and Peter Bogdanovich, and it was like such a great experience. But yeah, there were a lot of producers.
A lot of producers. Is that
one.
So? Again, it's an obvious question. Like, when you have that many producers on a movie, like, what is the point of view? What are the challenges of that?
Well, I feel like everyone kind of know their place and know what they bring to the table. I think there's producers, there's executive producers. So everyone has a role, and you need to make sure you work together and not, harming the process, let's say that. But yeah, on The Informer, you were asking. So that movie actually fell apart and came together like 3 years later. Mm-hmm. So there was people attached before, like on the first kind of cycle of the movie, that stay attached later on, but they weren't as active. And again, I brought financing, so it's a very different kind of angle and involvement with the film. Although I was in conversation about the casting, because I remember Andrea and Rosamund came to Cannes to help kind of tell the buyers about the movie. That's something we usually do in order to sell it around the world. And we were kind of having conversations about who should play one of the roles, the wife of Joel Kinnaman. And so again, you sometimes start with the financing, and then you tap into other places because you try to support the movie. So if I can bring a relationship, or I can bring another element that can benefit the production, sometimes you do that as well.
God, I was thinking of the old days where you have to go on a yacht and meet. Is it still?
Oh, in Cannes?
I haven't been in many years. So it's like, but in the old days, you'd come with a poster, and I mean,
you do that. You schmooze around, of course. You go on yacht and you go on meetings and you drink a lot of rosé.
Got a headache already.
That's it. I was just thinking about it because it's coming up in 2 weeks, and I was like, oh my God, am I ready for Cannes? But I have New York before, because we're starting Tesla on Monday next week. So I'm flying to New York next week.
To the shooting of the Tesla.
Mm-hmm.
All right, so let's talk about Tesla. I'm in. I can't wait. I had no idea this was happening. I read it. So tell us what Tesla is about. And oh my God, Michael L. Moreto, all people. I worked with Michael, Ethan.
You did? Oh,
yeah,
wonderful.
Michael wrote the screenplay for a movie I was in called Search and Destroy. And he went on and did directing and stuff. Great guy.
He's a brilliant director. I actually did Experimenter with him. So that's how I originally met Michael. That was a Peter Sarsgaard and Winona Ryder movie. That was at Sundance too, actually. And we shot that in New York 5 years ago, I think. But Tesla came to me at Sundance last when the kindergarten teacher was playing. Was it like a year and a half ago by now? And Ethan worked with Michael prior on a different film, and he's going to play Nikola Tesla, and it's a period piece. Takes place. We're filming in New York and upstate New York, and he was very passionate about it. And obviously, Michael and Ethan, they work well together. So for us, it was kind of a no-brainer, making it for the right budget and bring all the other elements to support Michael, because he has a very specific vision and he works in a very, unique way as a director that we're just there to support him. So I'm excited to be on set again.
And what is the plot of Tesla? It involves Edison.
Yes. I don't know how much I can chat about it. We actually probably going to make like an official announcement in the next few days. But yes, it has a very known characters from Edison and Tesla, and who invented.
They were both inventors.
They're both wonderful inventors. But the conspiracy or the conflict of who came first and who invented what and who should be known for what. So it touched base on that.
Yeah, I mean the same thing.
I know a little bit about the story of
do?
Tesla, because I actually have a friend who wrote a script about it and a book, and it's fascinating historical, drama. And
I love things like this.
It's gonna be. I can't wait to see it. I think.
I feel like a lot of us don't know, or at least I didn't know. Yeah. Obviously, we know who Edison is and what he's known for, and Tesla, but not for always what they should be known for. Right. So,
well, I feel like again, there's all sorts of stories about people, competing ideas and who ends up getting the credit for it, and it's all with movie cameras and things like that. And who was it? The Lumiere brothers? Was it Edison? Everybody was competing at the.
I just watched Be Natural, the documentary about Alice
Guy Blaché.
And I was like, I didn't know, and her credit got lost in history for so many movies as the first woman to direct and write and produce and put these productions together. So
I know they had movie I know, I did too.
In 100 years ago. Who knew? It's just crazy.
They had, studios in New Jersey and films, and it's pretty incredible. Lee, you
say that the Tesla project came to you at Sundance. What do you mean it came to you? Did somebody pitch you while you were there?
Oh yeah, the producer pitched it to me. Yeah, and he was like, "I'm working on this movie. We're looking for the financing." And I think 3 days later we had it financed. So that one happened really quickly. Wow. Yes, because I knew exactly who's the right financiers for it, and they really believed in it, and it came together really quickly. We were supposed to go a long time ago, but Ethan is so busy, and people chase him all the time because he's such a brilliant actor. So we had to push a few times, but
that'll be an interesting one. Is there any other films that you are working on? Do you ever do a comedy? Are you ever interested in comedies?
I'm doing a dramedy actually that starts on the same day in Toronto, with a wonderful cast as well. But I can't really talk about it. I got in trouble the other day because I said something and I was like, it's already on the internet. But everyone is really sensitive about it. But it's a really exciting project with a brilliant cast. And that one is a dramedy. And I'm shooting another movie this summer about Meyer Lansky, which is like a crime thriller action film. That I'm super excited about. This is a project I've been on for 5 years.
Yeah.
So, from every angle, fighting to get it made, and
can you say
together.
Can you say who's playing Meyer Lansky?
Can I? I don't even know. It's a legendary actor, but I feel like we're pitching it as the Jewish Goodfellas. That's really kind of the concept of the story. But it's actually the way that one came together is the director, his name is Ethan. I did his first movie, The Abandoned, which was a horror film, but his dad interviewed Meyer Lansky back in the day and wrote a book about it called But He Was Good to His Mother, interviewing him and other gangsters. And yeah, it's been Ethan's passion project to get it made for many, many years. And obviously, he had a complex kind of history and relationship with Israel because Meyer Lansky tried to move back to Israel. And obviously, with World War II, Hitler's days, fighting the Nazis in New York and starting Vegas and Cuba, there's like so many stories within that story. But he's such a legendary gangster that killed a lot of people, but started murdering. So I feel like it's going to be a fun one.
But people think he's was brilliant. Was brilliant.
He was brilliant from what I was reading about him, but like mathematician and physician. I don't know, physics. He was really good with numbers. Basically, he was running kind of the whole operation. Yeah.
Okay, so there's that one, and my God, all these. So the last question I was going to ask you is just like doing independent movies these days, and everybody keeps saying like that things feel like they're really changing for women and things like that. Do you also get that feeling that it's just becoming more normal for it's not so much women's movies, it's just movies with female protagonists? Do you get that feeling, or is it still?
What I see now more often is that people are actually looking for female-driven content. People are actually asking me, do you have anything like that is female-driven story? Or so I think that's great. I feel like a lot of the times now producers are kind of careful. So there was this movie I was putting together. We're still working on it, but it was two guys, and the story is female driven. It's about a female gangster kind of seeking revenge on men throughout the U.S. And they were kind of talking to me about it, and they were like, "We need a female producer. We can't be two men telling the story. We need a female voice to be attached and make sure we're doing this right." And I was like, "Okay, that's interesting. I don't think it I'm not used to that, right?
Yeah.
That never used to happen before." So, but I feel like there's more women now, more directors, and more directors kind of bringing and lifting other directors to get to a place that they can really, carry a film as a producer, as a director. And I think that's why I also started Women Creating Change, which is an organization that create opportunities for women, because I wasn't working with any women back then, especially from the financing side of the business.
Yeah.
Most of my investors are all men. Most of the producers I work with are usually men. And, the head of companies are usually men. So I was often the only woman in the room. And, I have my stories, right, about doing that. But it was important to me to find more women to work with.
What is the number one thing as a producer? How do you get money out of people? I feel like I'm never good at getting money out of people. I'm always apologize. I tell you, I'm like, I only need. No, I can do it for $1 million.
Yeah, it's something I had to learn. It's not about that. I think at the end of the day, you're making sure you're talking their language. So investors are looking for something specific, and when you understand what they're looking for, if they're looking for a business opportunity or they're looking to be associated with something that means something, a lot of investors just really want to help tell stories, or they want, to support women, or to, they have a different way of being involved that is important to them. And when you find that angle and you come from that place of this is why I'm passionate about this project, and this is why I think you should be passionate about it and help me tell it, it's just coming about it from a different perspective and an angle that you're just kind of talking their language. And also, you're responsible for a lot of money, so that's also scary when you ask for money from people. So that's why you need to make sure you're making movies for the right budgets. And I stay with my investors for years after to make sure we do whatever it takes to try and get them their money back. It happened that we lost money on movies, and it's never a good scenario. So you want
I can't even imagine that.
Yeah.
Now, how do you know that people have money? I think we've all in the business gone through the.
You don't know.
Around the third lunch, you're like, I don't think they have any money.
That's always interesting, right? It's like, I feel like I always have faith, right? As like, I give them the opportunity and the benefit of a doubt until it's been like, I remember calls when you were like already negotiating, attorneys are in, and then the money doesn't show up,
Oh,
you
God.
know? So
I know.
I feel like you don't know until there's money in the bank. That's why you never really think the movie's going to happen until the first day of you know, Prince of Photography, because so many things can go wrong. And, you know, for doing this for so many years, things go wrong. So you pray and you stay positive and, you know, you have backups. So I think trying to have backups is also important.
This is, God, I've learned so much. I feel like I'm going to be watching you on stage, accept an Academy Award very soon. You are one driven young woman. My goodness. I'm so impressed with you.
Thank you so much.
So why don't we end? This is going to be a first. I'm so excited. Why don't we end our
With Whispers from the Moon?
show with a poem?
Sure.
And I'll be going home looking at Instagram for writing poems.
Okay, this is one of my favorites, and it's called The Vow. I promise to honor the woman in me, even when poison pours from her lips, searing holes of insecurity into her beautiful skin. I will embrace her deeply, even when regret and past failures echo on the walls of her mind. I will love her fully, even when her heart shrinks in fear and shuts me out. I promise to put her first, heal her wounds of love, the burn marks on her soul from far too many disappointments. I will water her with light, feed her kindness, kiss her scars, bathe her with love, until death do us part.
Beautiful. I love that. Do you have can we do one more?
Sure.
I love that one. I know we should have only done one, but I need one more.
Okay. I'll do a fun one.
Okay.
Okay. It's called Coffee. Can you take me dark, bitter, spicy, but sometimes sweet, on the days I don't look, feel, or smell like me? Can you take me when I'm smooth, my aroma delicious, my taste awakening every part of you, an insatiable craving for me, for more? I can be hot or icy. I can be only yours to hold if you can have me whole. At my best, at my blandest, at those times I don't come with cream to balance the palate. Not easy to swallow, not easy to handle, but tempting enough that you'll keep coming back. The one I deserve, the one I need, loves me, even when he longs for tea.
Aw, wonderful. Well, Lee Broda, thank you so much. Thank you
Thank you.
for your poetry, your films.
Yes, you can look for Lee's films, A Private War and The Kindergarten Teacher, out now. Also, her book, Whispers from the Moon, is available at Amazon.com. A link will be on our website. And her website is leebroda.com. Thank you, Lee.
Thank you.
And you can buy Illeana's book, I Blame Dennis Hopper, in bookstores if
Yes,
you know
you
what those
can.
are. Or you can also get that at Amazon. Also, like our Facebook page, and our website is illeanaspodcast.com.
That's right. And as we always say, everyone's life is like a movie with a beginning, a middle, and an end. And this is the end of our movie for today. Thank you so much, Lee. It's been a
Thank
pleasure.
you.
Thanks. Have a great day, everyone. So long.
From producers Maria Menounos, Kevin Undergaro, Phil Svitek, and the entire Popcorn Talk Network, we would like to thank you for tuning in. For questions or comments, be sure to visit popcorntalk.com. I'm Sir Richard Wentworth, and this has been a presentation of the Popcorn Talk Network.
The views expressed herein are those of the hosts only and do not necessarily reflect the views of AfterBuzz TV or its owners or principals.